pros and cons, and who should opt for a 4mm arrow. Let's talk about it. All right, thanks for joining me today here at Extreme Outfitters. My name is Zach, and today we are talking about our 4mm arrows, one of the, I would say, the more increasingly popular arrow shafts that we sell. A 4mm arrow is often referred to as a micro diameter or a 1/66 shaft. It's the smaller arrow diameter in the lineup. So you've got your 4mm, you've got your the Ultra View 4.5mm arrows in the 1K series. You've got a 5mm arrow, a 6mm, and then a 6.5. So what are the benefits? Benefit number one is increased penetration. A 4mm arrow has a much smaller surface area than standard 5mm or 6.5mm shafts. So since there's less material in contact with flesh, bone, or a target medium, there's significantly less drag as the arrow passes through. So you can think of it as like a knife. So a knife with a smaller blade is going to slice through with less resistance. That is going to equal a deeper wound channel and more pass-throughs. So reduced drag means more of the arrow's energy is carried through the target, increasing the odds of a full pass-through. More pass-throughs equal better blood trails, easier tracking, and more recovered animals. This can be especially crucial for bow hunters targeting large game animal like elk or moose or so on. This is also true for quartering away shots where the arrow must travel a longer distance through tissue. The other big advantage is momentum retention. Even with the same bow setup, a smaller diameter means more momentum through the target because there's less energy lost to friction. So this can help compensate for slightly lower draw weights or shorter draw lengths, which gives you, the bow hunter, more confidence in getting that clean kill. So benefit number two is improved accuracy in the wind. And I think this is one of the bigger benefits of the 4mm arrow shaft. So reduced surface area equals less wind drift. A 4mm arrow has a narrower profile, so there's less arrow shaft for crosswinds to push against, critical for those long shots. Let's look at a real world example. So imagine, let's say you're shooting 60 to 80 yards and you have a really strong crosswind. A thicker diameter arrow might drift several inches off target. So that's enough to turn a perfect double lung shot into potentially a liver shot. So a 4mm arrow will stay closer to center, giving you a larger margin of error. Looking at it, I would say your 4mm is going to be better suited for your Western hunts and open country, right? So wind is a constant factor in places like the Midwest Plains and the Western states. A 4mm shaft is ideal for those environments where long shots and variable wind conditions are more common or much more consistent than here, let's say like on the East Coast. So even for some of your target archers or 3D shooters, less wind drift means more consistency and of course higher scores. So the final benefit I would say is better energy retention. So aerodynamics work in your favor. A 4mm arrow slices through the air with less drag than a standard diameter arrow. So if you know anything about the recent ballistic study that was done by James Yates at Easton, there was a 10% less drag than a 5mm shaft. So if you look at going from a 5mm to a 6 to a 6.5, there's gonna be significantly less drag on your 4mm arrow shafts. So the micro diameter shaft maintains speed longer over distance, which is especially noticeable past those greater distances, 60 plus yards. The faster your arrow is traveling when it hits, the more kinetic energy and momentum it delivers. This extra retained energy translates into deeper penetration and more reliable pass-throughs, especially on those marginal shots. So this is particularly valuable for bow hunters, I would say. So anybody that's shooting those longer distances, I would say 60 plus yards, or who are hunting heavier, bigger game that require maximum energy on impact. The other thing I'm a big proponent of is you get a flatter trajectory with your 4mm arrows. A faster arrow that retains velocity has a slightly flatter trajectory, reducing the amount of pin gap adjusted needed at various yardages. So this means less room for error on distance estimation. So a big confidence booster for hunters in real world conditions where animals rarely stand in the same spot or at that perfect yardage for you. So if we look at more of like a practical example, at 70 yards, a 4mm arrow might retain a few feet per second more speed than comparable 5mm arrow. So that may not sound like a lot, but it is enough to keep your shot on target and drive broadheads through whatever you're shooting at. So one of the other things we get into is the trade-offs, your pros and cons of going to the 4mm arrow selection, right? One of the big things you look at is component cost and availability. Your components are typically more limited, and cost more for your 4mm shafts. A micro diameter shaft requires specialized components. So you're limited to a deep 6 option or your outsert system, which again are generally more expensive than your standard maybe 5mm or 6.5mm components. So this adds up when it comes to building a full dozen arrows when you look at lighted nocks, broadheads, and depending on the outsert system that you go for. So fewer options exist for the 4mm components, so finding the exact weight that you're looking to achieve may be a little bit more difficult and may require a little bit more research. But however, we do see more companies going towards these micro diameter 4mm shafts, which is allowing, or they're coming out with more component options for you to choose from. So when it comes to the building and tuning side of things, because the tolerances are tighter, you need to be extra precise when it comes to the building process. Cutting, squaring, and gluing components must be spot on. So a misaligned outsert or sloppy build can cause broadheads to fly poorly or just an overall poor performing arrow. So we have noticed micro diameter shafts can be slightly more sensitive to tuning errors. So you need to make sure when you're going to the 4mm that you have a properly tuned bow and that bow is tuned to that 4mm shaft that you are going to be shooting. The other concern that we look at with our 4mm stuff is the durability side of things. In particular, when we talk about component strength, right? Some of our outserts and half outserts or half outs systems can bend if they're not that higher quality, right? Or that higher quality material, especially when we look at aluminum and even some of your stainless steel stuff. So we really recommend reinforcing builds with high-end components like, I would start with your stainless steel stuff, or better yet, your titanium outserts for maximum strength. But whenever you start going into that stainless steel or even that titanium, your overall weight starts to increase. So who might skimp on the 4mm arrows? If you're a whitetail hunter who shoots those close shots, right? Especially here on the East Coast, 20 to 30 yard average shots from a tree stand, the benefits of the 4mm arrows might not outweigh the cost needed to build out a dozen or so, right? Also, if you're a casual shooter, a new archer, or someone who's on a budget, you might find it better to go with maybe a 5mm or a standard diameter shaft. So when we look at our top selling 4mm arrows, there's two that particularly stand out. So our number 1 and number 2 is going to be the Easton Axis 4mm and the Victory VAP TKO. So Easton does come with a nice half outsert system. It is unfortunately aluminum, but it is a 55 grain outsert. And it comes with their match grade series. It does line up very well with the arrows, with the O-ring that's a part of the system. So whenever you insert those inserts or those outserts into the actual shaft, there's no slop or no play in them whatsoever. So it's a very nice system. Same thing with your VAP TKOs. They have their 50 grain shock outsert. Again, both of these outserts are aluminum, so they are gonna be on the weaker side and more apt to bend. If you hit, a hard spot, you miss a target, and you go to retrieve that arrow, you'll notice that they are more likely to bend than going to, let's say, a titanium outsert system. So when it comes to building your arrows, you need to make sure you take time when building these, right? That means the cutting process. When you run them through the saw, make sure you're cutting them square. After you've cut them, you need to make sure you get a squaring device and square them even further. It's important that these arrows are built very meticulously so that when you go to insert that outsert into the shaft, it marries up nice and flush. There's no slop in it. Again, if these arrows or these outsert systems aren't glued properly and there's a little bit of play or slop in them, you're gonna have a poor flying arrow, and that's amplified when you put a broadhead on the front of this shaft. So who should consider shooting the 4mm shafts? I would say it's gonna be great for any of your bow hunters who are shooting those long shots, right? Maybe if you're doing some total archery stuff and your focus is those long distance 3D shots, the 4mm is going to be a great option for you. Or if you're somebody that spends a lot of time out west hunting the western states where you're going to be shooting those open distances, the larger game and crosswinds are in effect out there. The 4mm is going to be a really great option for you. So again, if you're mostly hunting whitetail deer, East Coast, out of a stand where you have those shorter shots, I don't think that the 4mm is gonna be the best bet for you, just cost-wise. These do get expensive, so you're better off looking at maybe a standard diameter shaft or a 5mm option. So that is it, my friends, your 4mm arrows, who they're for, pros and cons of them, and what you need to consider in the build process. I'd be curious to hear back from you guys. How many of you guys are running 4mm shafts? You know, are you primarily building them for Western hunts? Are you hunting East Coast whitetail with them? Drop some comments, give us some feedback. Let us know how you would build up your 4mm and what your favorite 4mm arrow shaft is. As always, don't forget, we do offer all of our shafts individually. So if you're looking to pick up a new set of 4mm, whether it's the Victory VAP TKOs, the Easton Axis 4mm, we've got them all in stock. You can buy them individual to do your own testing, and we do offer free cut and glue. So if you need us to cut them down for you, square them up and glue your inserts, we do that at no additional charge. And anything ordered over 50 bucks, we ship for free with the code FREESHIP. So as always, we really appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Head over to the website, check out the inventory if you need anything new, extremeoutfitters.com, and we will see you guys in the next video.